All right, guys, welcome to another episode, Florida Hockey Bros podcast. My name is David. I'm joined by my brother Dario across the screen there. The Florida Panthers beat the Tampa Bay Lightning on Wednesday night, 3-2. Very fun game, especially third period. We'll get my brother's thoughts in a minute on that game. We have a few topics today. We'll be recapping that game against the Lightning. We will also transition into Samson Reinhart's contract. It's been such an interesting year for contracts and, with the cap going up, etc. And we'll do some comparables as well with Elias Lindholm in Calgary demanding $9 million per year on his new contract. So that's a very interesting topic, I think. And then we'll transition into around the league, as we always do towards the end of the episode. We'll talk about the Maple Leafs, what we think, are some structural issues with that franchise in general. And we'll kind of just float around towards the end of the episode and give you guys our thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, thumbs down. That's fine. Any positive, negative comments, we'll take them as well. Any constructive feedback as well. All right, guys. So Dario, Tampa Bay Lightning looked. They had a little bit of a spark to start the game, and then they kind of faded. They've had a very strange year, and I think part of it was just even with Vasilevsky coming back, he kind of needs to get on his groove again, I guess. But yeah, such a weird game against the Panthers. They showed some frustration at the end of the third period. The Lightning did. Stamkos with a very weird penalty, trying to take Ekblad's head off just because he checked him into the ice. And then Cirelli with a terrible penalty with the empty net, although Barkov was probably going to score anyway, even though he's terrible. He doesn't like empty netters. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the game and anything that stood out? I think just coming off the holiday, last time we came off Thanksgiving, the team looked dreadful. So I think the Panthers looked okay. Not a lot of energy, but they play well and they play their game.
Yeah, the first two periods we were the better team. And Tampa weren't giving us much. You told me that they just, I think they kind of woke up in the third and started to do more of that forecheck and sort of put us in a little bit more trouble. Also got a couple of good bounces on the rebounds. The first goal, Mikolas actually trying to clear it, and it goes literally to Kucherov's stick with in front of the net. And then the second one, the first shot by Eisenman hits the defenseman, and then he falls again on his stick. So that you already got bobbed down. So again, not terrible goals to give up. And Bob had a great game. I mean, he made some ridiculous saves. And so did Vasilevsky. I mean, it was in the third period, it got crazy. But it was a fun game for after the holidays. It had decent energy. We were not that fast. You could tell we didn't have our usual speed or energy. But Reinhart, helped with those goals. Incredible pass by Rodriguez, man. That pass by Rodriguez was sweet. It was elite. It was between two people. And it's the kind of pass that Reinhart makes. And we needed those, and we hit some posts. Lundell, I want to say, had a great game. He was noticeable. He looked big, he looked big on the boards. He looked like he was into it. He was anticipating hits. He was protecting the puck, getting the puck out to the defenseman. And that line actually created a lot of offense and sustained pressure. Just Cousins in front of the net twice, just can't finish. But and Lusty is kind of an interesting player because I think that line just is not well constructed. I mean, I know we don't have a ton of options. I think Lusty and Lundell make their money on the boards. Even Lundell as a center, because he's so defensive minded, he's not going to just be looking for space to shoot. He's actually, he doesn't cheat. He'll forecheck, but then he'll be trying to make sure that they protect the puck, trying to make sure it goes to the right player, and then kind of stay behind the net. And Lusty kind of plays the same way. So it really is up to Cousins. This is why Cousins had two chances in front of the net. He's supposed to be that shooter. He's supposed to be that winger. And again, we know he's not that guy. So I do think that they need to either get a fast winger eventually to play with them, who will look for the space in front of the net to get those passes off the boards to get that one-timer in, or you need a guy who is kind of a power forward that goes to the front of the net. And either one of those guys will be a good addition to that line, but they need that. But yeah, they look good. The fourth line hit everybody. They had a ton of hits in the game, which is great to see. They had good energy going. Lockwood was okay. I still prefer Gadjevich, but yeah, it was overall a solid game. I mean, it could have been a letdown. We held the fort at the end and got the points which we needed, especially against Tampa. Tampa right now is not a good spot. I mean, they're out of the wild card, and they have most teams around them and in front of them have 2 to 3 games in hand because they've played so many games. So, they've been playing better lately, but they're still out of it. And some teams are going to pass them or even increase their lead in the next 2 to 3 games. I noticed that for some of the other teams in the wild card, and even Pittsburgh could catch up because I think they have like 3 games in hand. So, so yeah, man, good win. Move on to the back-to-back now against the Rangers. We were talking about it before. It's a kind of a tricky game. The trap game is tomorrow against Montreal because they're feisty and have a winning record on the road. I know they just lost against Carolina, but they were tied in that game 3-3. They kept coming back. So we have to watch out tomorrow, not to take it for granted. But the Rangers, yeah, man, they got number 1 power play and number 5 PK. So stay out of the box and try to win with speed. But I'm feeling good about where we are, man. Maurice got them playing well, and I think we know what the deficiencies are. I think they know. We could talk about the PK, and what Maurice was saying about that. And I know you mentioned it to me yesterday, but yeah, I think the team is on the right track with the GM and the coach, and we know what our identity is and what they're trying to build toward for the playoffs. So I'm feeling good about the team again after that terrible road trip.
Yeah, and I think that's why those road trips are tricky, and you have to kind of just take the results for whatever they are and move on. A lot of teams struggle on road trips. Vegas did. A lot of good teams do.
Vegas lost against Anaheim. I mean, they won yesterday against the Kings, but they blocked. I saw Vegas blocked like 38 shots or something. It was crazy, and it was a tight game. But yeah, Vegas came out of the holidays with a 5-2 loss to the Ducks, which is not good, man.
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on over
there. Well, I think this is the time of year where teams are starting to take shape. This is who they're probably going to be the rest of the year. That's why you can't just go by the first 20 games purely. You just want to get points to start the season. Those first 20 games are good to get points. But you're still trying to find your identity, even if you're carrying on from last year. Like, look at the Hurricanes, there's certain teams that just couldn't do it. They couldn't bring that, whatever was working for them last season. Every year is a little different, even though the same teams kind of make the playoffs. I think back to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Yeah, I think the Lightning eventually need a spark. They need to maybe. I think they're gonna trade Stamkos at the deadline. I think that's coming for sure. Just looking at his comments, at the start of the season, and the fact that they never talk to him basically about an extension or anything like that.
I don't know if that's going to happen, but okay, we'll see.
Well, I mean, unless they want to let him walk for free, or they're offering.
No, I think they're going to extend him. They're going to extend him. They're just
a low contract.
They're trying to convince him to take less, I think is what it is.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them did, right? Like Kucherov, is Kucherov making 10 mil? I think he's making like 8 or 9, right?
I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of those guys they took a bit of a pay cut. And just being in the state of Florida, like there is a tax break, but it's not like this huge amount. I think it's like $11 million in Canada, an $11 million contract. It's something like 9.5 or 8.5 in Florida. Something that's like the equivalent of the take home side of it. But anyway, yeah, I think Tampa is just trying to get some consistency, and they just and you see it in their games. Their games are just like their seasons. It's just like they'll just put in a good 20 minutes and call it a day, and that's why they're beatable even when they're the better team. But anyway, and as far as the special teams for the Rangers, we can talk about Maurice and his comments. He was talking yesterday to the media, and he spoke about the biggest change from last season to this season in terms of personnel. and just ideology when it comes to the special teams. He talked about the penalty kill, and that was an area that they needed to work on. You mentioned that about Lomberg wasn't the PK last year. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, our PK last year was bad, especially that second unit. So he talked about how Cito worked on bringing in guys specifically for that. That's why Stanley is here, which he's a great penalty killer. Super, super. I mean, Stanley is a keeper. I think they'll keep him for the fourth line. You kind of have to. Mikola, Lusty. He spoke about giving Barkov and Reinhart a bit of a break on the penalty kill so they can be more efficient and just more energized at the end of games. And you're able to play them more on the offense, which is what's clicking right now for that line. Our top line is finally great. Top 10 in the league. And our top pairing as well on defense with Forsling and Ekblad. And Maurice also talked about that, how Ekblad, last January, he was asked to sit back and defend, basically, to abandon his offensive game. He did that, and he's been really good. Ekblad has been really good. He's been taking less penalties as of late. He plays the body well, which is what a defenseman should do. And Forsling is just very, very twitchy, like very fast. You can see no one kind of gets past him. He skates back with the guy. Guy stops. He stops. He's just very fast on his decision making. And I think that's why that top pairing is working so well. But yeah, I know you're a huge Maurice fan, and he's clearly a smart coach. I think we have the smartest GM coaching duo. I'm not going to say the best because some people are going to be like, oh, look at the Kings, whatever. I think they are the smartest. And he mentioned something, Maurice mentioned something. I don't know what you think about this. He made a comment of the guys. I forgot the right quote. He said the guys, or we have the guys on a specific path, or our specific path. So I think there is, even with the players in mind, there is a window or a trajectory that they want the players to go in to make it a consistent playoff appearance team and hopefully win the title.
Yeah, it's about personnel, and it's about maximizing the system with the personnel. The PK, the way they evaluated it last year, he kind of took a dig at the Stalls because he said, it was a personal issue. We needed a right-handed centerman, which we have now with Stanley or whatever. So Eric Stahl, Mark Stahl, they're very slow. And he needed them on the PK because otherwise, then you have to get a lot of minutes for some of the top guys. He's trusting Forsling and Ekblad on the PK. Then you have Mikola, you have Kulikov, and guys that can block shots. They're very long. They're sticks. They can cover space. And then, yes, when you have Luostarinen and Stenlund and Lundell and, guys like that can kill penalties and you can trust them, then you don't need Barkov and Reinhart to be your first or second pairing. And so I think that's helped a lot, just having guys. And he said it early on, the first 10 games we were awful because we didn't have the chemistry. The speed wasn't there as much, but now we have the speed, the length, the trust, and then they're moving in unison. And we've climbed from one of the worst PKs to, I think we're 8th in the league now. We're probably going to climb to top 5 if we stay the course. So yeah, and the same for the power play. I mean, the main issue for the power play, the chances are there. So they have a decent system. We create a ton of chances. The expected goals are super high for the power play. So it's a matter of not having the shooters, man. And we've talked about it, Kachuk and Barkey, they play on that wing sometimes and they switch, and neither of them has a one-timer. And then on the other side, they tried Rodriguez early on. That didn't seem to work, and for whatever reason, they took him off. Now they got Verhaeghe, which is working a little bit better, but Verhaeghe is a left-hand shot on the left side, not ideal for a one-timer. So he has to hold the puck first. And so when you look at teams like the Rangers and the Lightning, you got Stamkos with a nasty one-timer. Khrushchev can also shoot it, much better shooter than Kachuk and Barkov. And then the Rangers, you have Sabanajai, which is one of the best one-timer shooters. Kreider in front of the net, who's one of the best guys in front of the net. He's even taller and bigger than Kachuk is. And then you have some of these other skill guys that can move the puck, like Trocheck, Panarin, who's an elite, puck carrier. So, yeah, when you have that level of skill, your special teams are going to show. We are lacking some of that right now on the power play. And then you see the struggles despite the system being solid because they are creating the chances. So I like that they evaluate. I don't know that they're the smartest like duo in the league, but they've got to be one of them for sure. And I think that they have a clear, they've committed to what they said when they hired Maurice: create a new culture, create a new system. You can filter and funnel players through that system, and then stay at a high level. Even when you have a down year, you can continue to build, and then you have an infusion now, young players that are going to be coming in with talent that we haven't had in a while. So our drafting getting a lot better. So yeah, man, I think we're on the right track, and I trust them. I trust them to correct things, to evaluate things, and they also don't panic. I like that. It's frustrating for you and me. Like, sometimes we text and you're like, oh man, I got to trade Cousins. Oh man, Lundell looks like shit. Whatever. Kachuk's not scoring, but at the same time, Maurice is like preaching patience and evaluating game by game and kind of having perspective, right? Like, is this really a bad sign? Is this a pattern, or is this a one-off? And then you see the team bounce back against really good competition. So he's trusting the guys. He's not losing the room. He's keeping everybody with belief. He's building guys up, but also holding them accountable to some extent. He has switched some of the lines when he's needed to, but he doesn't do what other coaches do, which is immediately after a bad game, like they like put everything in a blender. And that's been a criticism of other teams. So anyway, I think we're in good shape. Good place to be, almost halfway into the season. So looking forward to the back-to-back and then the road trip next week. And once we come out of that, most of our games are in the East. So yeah, and hopefully we'll make a trade or two and then see what happens after the deadline and get us into the playoffs, man. I want to see us again, see if it was for real, see if we can get through a round.
Yeah, I think that's the big test. I think the test is the consistency. Can we make the playoffs every year, and can we actually keep up our style of play? I think we can, as long as we have these players. And it's such an interesting topic, just to wrap it up, because sometimes we tend to think, well, you just have to get the right players for your system. But I think in this case, it doesn't matter. Maurice came in, the players were already there. Obviously, Kachuk bought in, Barkov bought in, Ekblad clearly bought in. Montour, but then you have guys like Verhaeghe who, if you don't push, they can tend to get lazy or maybe not back check as much. But he plays hard, and he skates well. He forechecks really well with that line. That's why that line is so successful. Bennett, Verhaeghe, and Kachuk. It's just Kachuk hasn't been able to score. But it's just funny to see that, and yeah, you set up that culture and that system. And you bring up the guys, the young guys, you trade for players, and you see how they fit. And once they come in, Mikkola is playing well. He already got his money. He doesn't have to play this hard, Same with Lusterinen. Lusterinen doesn't have to play this hard. He just got his money. But obviously they're looking for a bigger contract down the line. It's just like the players have bought into the system, to the coach, and to everything. And that's why it's we'll transition there. That's why it's going to be curious to see what the extensions are going to be for some of these guys. Obviously, Reinhart, Forsling, and Montour are the ones that need to be taken care of this season. But let's stay on Reinhart. We saw that, Elias Lindholm, Calgary, he's demanding $9 million per year. He wants a nice contract, which is fine. He's 29 years old. He's at 4.8 right now. And he is a center, which brings a little extra value, I think, on these contracts. And then you have Reinhart, who's more, obviously he's a winger. I think he's having a phenomenal year. But I don't know if Reinhart is just taking off because he's getting really good passes from Barkov and Rodriguez. And how much is just him playing his game and having it shine because of, having those line mates. I have no idea what Reinhart wants to get paid. None of us do. I don't think we will know until that comes out. But yeah, I know you want to talk about Lindholm a little bit and Reinhart and how the league or general managers value these players with these contracts.
Yeah, I mean, it's just curious. There are different types of players, and I guess my curiosity is always like, what do guys want to get paid and why? In the case of Reinhart, you look at his career and he falls within a certain range, right? Like he's a 20 to 30 goal scorer, 50 to 60 point player, usually solid on the power play. He gets half his points at least, or definitely he's half his goals or more, usually on the power play. This year he's been better overall. He's having a career year on a contract year. In some ways, as a red flag, you want to make sure that you don't pay him for this 1 year, unless your evaluations, your advanced metrics, everything is telling you see him work and practice every day. He is a very smart guy. He's a leader. He's a talker. He actually has a lot more personality than people get to see. When you look at the videos, interviews, and stuff, and you see him talk, I just see a guy who actually does have a strong personality, and I think that can go a long way in your locker room. So if you're counting on him of being a future leader and a guy who's like now mature and a veteran and still in his 20s and can give you 5, 6, 7 years of really solid play, then you have to decide what that is. But if the guy wants to get paid $9 million, $10 million, that is top winger, like legit top winger money, 40 goal scorer money, that kind of stuff. And I don't know that he's that every year. And I think that to me is the part that's tricky. So you either have to look at the whole thing and say, hey, Reinhart, we want you, but here's a reality and here's a role that we could see you long term. Because there's a world in which he's not always your top winger on the right. So, and if you want to give him more like in the $8 million range and see if that it's like enough to keep him around and you still have him as a top 6 winger. But if he wants like top money, then at that point, in my opinion, you kind of have to move on and take a chance. And I just don't see Reinhart going off and becoming a 40 to 50 goal scorer in the league every year. I don't, as you said, a lot of his goals from the net. Right now, his shooting percentage is high. He's getting a lot of good shots in. Last year, we saw him hit a ton of posts, miss a ton of shots, get moved out of the first. And that could happen again, right? Like he could be moved again. And so, again, he has a lot of value, but I don't see him as like the top line cornerstone. He's not an Nylander. He's not one of these guys that's going to always be a game changer, in my opinion. So he falls somewhere in there. To me, it's a value question of like, what are you going to be for the rest of your career? And I think he's ideally, to me, a $7 to $8 million player. And then you have to expect it to perform at that level. And, you can always move him. He can play a little bit of center. He's a smart guy. Other teams might take him if they need a veteran, good scorer, and the contract's always going to get better with the cap going up. With Lindholm, it's just curious to me. He's a two-way player. He's like no offense meant by this, but he's kind of a poor man's Barkov. He's gotten silky boats. He's good on the faceoffs. He's got one season with 80-some points, one season with 78, and then the rest are kind of in the 40s and 50s. And he's projecting to have between 50 and 55 points. And I know that Calgary's struggling, but still, he's like their main center. He's playing a ton of minutes this year because they don't have a deeper team. He's playing like 21 minutes, but usually he plays 18 to 19 minutes a game. And then you look at a guy like Brendan Hagel, who's not a center, but also got some silky votes last year. He's a decent guy. At 6.5, signing with Tampa, he is younger than Lindholm. He's having a better season points-wise than Lindholm. I was just comparing them and looking at them. And he's got 29 points. Hagel does with 10 goals, and Lindholm has 23 points with 8 goals. So, and they're both minus players right now. So, all to say that $9 million that Lindholm asking, obviously he's asking because he's a veteran, he's a leader, he's a two-way player, he can win faceoffs, he can defend and play some offense. But a lot of teams are looking at him as like the legit teams are looking at him as a number 2 center. So if you're going to pay $9 million for a number 2 center, not quite Don Tavares money, but that's pretty high, man, for a second center. And so I am curious to see. I don't think Calgary will give him the 9. Who knows? And if they don't, then he's going to have to decide. I'm either going to have to play on a bad team for $9 million a year, or if he wants to go to the Bruins or any team that wants a center, he's going to have to take a pay cut because I just think that's way too much. So I wonder if he's asking for 9 as a way of saying like it's either 9 or I go because I don't necessarily want to stay here, or so he's using that as leverage to get his big contract to stay, kind of like Huberdeau, or is it more like he thinks that's the value? So anyway, it's just curious to see how some guys are like that. And then there are other guys who like just sign real quick. And you asked me about Kucherov. Kucherov is making the same as Tkachuk, 9.5. And I know he signed some years ago. He still got 3 more years after this on the contract, but that's tremendous value for Kucherov at 9.5. I know that in this market he will be worth a lot more, but this is still the numbers you have to work with, right? So if you're getting Kucherov for 9.5 for 3 more years, and you have to pay Lindholm $9 million for the next 3 years, and they're both the same age going into their 30s, you as a GM, in my opinion, should not do that. Lindholm, to me, it's probably more of a $6.57 million player as a center.
Yeah, and I think the term on a lot of these contracts matter. You know, if you decide to give a guy like Reinhart, you know, let's say 8.5 or something like that for the next like 7 years, to me that's fine, because in 2 years that shouldn't be as high of a percentage of your cap, but you have to be careful with the drop off, etc. I think actually like Reinhart has been very consistent his whole career. It's just a matter of, you know, what's that worth today. I know like the value has gone up on a lot of guys. I think like Barkov is valued at like 12 million now, and Reinhardt's like 11.5, which makes no sense to me, but it's more about, you know, what you get with scoring and your point about Reinhart being in a contract year and having like his best year. Should it be a red flag? Of course it should be, because now you have to, like you mentioned, take into account, is he doing this because he knows it's a contract year and he has to play really hard? Is it just a combination of things with Rodriguez coming in, and Rodriguez is more of a service type of player, same with Barkov. So now Reinhart gets all those 42 goals that Verhaeghe scored last year between the second and first line. Like, all that stuff matters, and the tricky part is going to be for Cito to make a decision, and you have to extend them. I would assume that, you know, they're working on it, and I don't know if he will be ballsy enough to trade him at the deadline, because you know what the feedback and the pushback is going to be from the fans on that. So that's the tricky part. I'm very, very curious to see where Cito goes with it. But yeah, all right. Let's talk about the league. What's going on around the league? Just so you guys know, if you're listening now, we do talk a lot about the Maple Leafs and some of the other top teams in the league. We'll talk about the Bruins here and there, just because we do follow. We watch a lot of those games, and we like comparing other systems and coaches and to the Panthers, and just it's nice to see the difference and how well constructed this Panthers team is, and what Maurice's influence has done for the team. So when you compare that to other teams like the Maple Leafs, which are the most fascinating team ever, I think, to us, just because it's such a weird and unique franchise from the top down. So anyway, let's talk about that game a little bit against the Senators and how the Leafs kind of fell off. They were pretty unlucky. They should have scored a lot more, but it happens to the Panthers all the time. No excuses. And I want to start off with I saw Anthony Stewart. He was a guest on Leafs Nation, I want to say. And he made some comments that were pretty interesting to me. About halfway through the video, he talks about how in the past he made some comments about, does it really matter if the Maple Leafs win? Does it matter to ownership? And he was kind of reprimanded for saying that, to not say things like that in public. And he was talking about the money that the team is bringing in, and does it really matter if they go deep in the playoffs? You know, they sell out every game. It's very expensive tickets. They're obviously the most popular team, I think, in North America. For one reason or the other, you have people like Steve Dangle, cashing in on that, and with his, overreactions after every game. So people love that. We watch it. I love it. And it was just an interesting point that Anthony Stewart made about that franchise. And I think that highlights everything. And that's why, if you follow them, you know that Shanahan reportedly called the core four and told them they weren't getting traded. And there was a rumor that Dubas wanted to trade Marner. Anyway, we could go on and on and on. So your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's easy. The Leafs are interesting, I think, because they are sort of the most followed team and the one that has the most, the biggest market and also the most coverage. So there's a lot of podcasts and a lot of conversations. There's fan content. There's analyst content. And if you're a hockey fan, it's just an interesting team to follow because they haven't won, because of the persecution complex, because they're a good team. They have some talent, top level talent. And the construction of the team is unique. And Dubas was also kind of that GM that wanted attention. And so, why not? Why not? And they're in our division, and we beat them last year. So they're a rival. The Lightning are a little bit boring by comparison these days. And also they won a ton. So, we can hit on the Lightning all we want, but they've earned their cookies and we haven't. So it's just, it doesn't feel like smart to put them down too much. So anyway, I think it's funny that game, the Senators looked terrible the first period. Like you and I were texting like, wow, this team just they're not going to come back, right? And meaning in the season, like to make the playoffs. I still don't think they will. I think that they're going to continue to struggle with defensively. They're not very sound. But yeah, that first period, man, that's the one where the Leafs could have scored a lot more. And yeah, the Leafs and Tampa and some of these teams and the Red Wings have been getting a lot of puck luck. I mean, the numbers show it. A lot of things going their way, fluky goals going in, like things falling on their sticks, last minute goals, etc. OT wins, OT losses, all that. So for the first time, I saw them like not get the goals that the Panthers have not been getting, which is like the rebounds right there, or the hits off the post, or even against Tampa, Barkov had a backhand that should have gone in and just hit the post and went out, and Lundell hit a post from a corner, and so I think that all of a sudden when things are not going your way, you have to rely on your system. You have to rely on that's how we won against Tampa, right? Like not everything went in, and Tampa had their chances, but you had your goalies made a couple of key saves, and even if Tampa had a little bit of puck luck on the rebounds, you still put them away. Because you only allowed the 2 goals, you held the fort, and then you drew a penalty to end the game. So the Leafs just disappeared the last 2 periods. I mean, I don't know what it is. Like, I mean, I kind of do. Like, you watch them play, and they just look for offense. They're always looking to attack. Is it Riley? Like, he loves to pinch in, and he's a very talented guy. He's like Montour. But Montour does not pinch in as much, not even Agblad or Kulikov, who love to kind of go deep sometimes to the detriment of the defense. So McCabe used to do it. I think he's doing it less. But yeah, Riley, it's like he plays like a forward, and he pinches in on the wings down the middle. If you just watch closely, because he plays a ton of minutes, and you watch him, especially with the top 2 lines, when he's with the top 2 lines, he just looks like another forward. You have 4 guys always like down below. That's why they give us so much on the rush. And this is what they tend to do in the playoffs when they shouldn't do it. And this is how the Panthers got them. But I think that's what it is. I think it's the culture is to attack, to get the points, to get the cookies, as they like to say over there, like trying to get the cookies. But they're not caring about the system. They're not caring about the defense as much. And that's a culture thing, because that's been happening forever. And I know they had a better defensive number last year. Samsonov played well. Maybe the guys listened then. Maybe the personnel, they had Justin Hall, they had Gustafsson, they had Giordano playing, and maybe those guys actually contributed to that. But I don't think that they're like, I told you, they're not a serious team. And what I mean by that is that they're not trying to build towards something, in my opinion. That even the leaders of the team, they think that this is who they are, that we are the stars, we are talented, we're great players, we can use that to win. And that's how they play. They play to show. And that stadium is always packed. The arena is always packed. It's always ready to go. And so, as much as people like to hate on the team and their own fans criticize them, it just, that's the whole point, is to make the show, to make money, and the team will continue, the defense will continue to follow it. I mean, we saw them after last year, we're going to blow it up, They didn't blow it up, and everybody's like happy that, give Nylander $11 million, $10 million, whatever.
Well, they also like, what was really confusing to me personally, and I'm sure it was to you as well, it's I did not understand why they thought they had a better team this year. You added Reeves and Bertuzzi. Maybe Bertuzzi, like that makes sense in a way. Like, hey, we added some scoring depth, but you're still gonna have the same issues, and your defense is just not good enough. That's not a good enough defense to get you anywhere. So they need like two defenders and another forward. Max Domi is just okay. They're just like overvalue these guys just because they're there. Your fourth line is whatever. I saw someone, not gonna say the name, but he was like, "Oh, Lagerson, how did he not play a single minute for the Canadians last season? Wouldn't that have been a sign for you to know that there's a reason for that?" So you're saying, well, the Canadians are completely just incompetent. There's a reason for that. Like, it's just funny. It's just funny that they don't look at, considering how big the market is, you would think that there's a lot of people there with a lot of knowledge, and some of them do. Yeah, that guy Rosie from Leafs Nation, obviously Kipper and Bourne. It's a good podcast, highly recommend it. And they talk about other things as well, other things around the league. They have really good guests all the time that provide a lot of perspective when you hear other GMs being asked about the Leafs and what's wrong, and it's always the same answer. And you can it's just there for you to see. Like, anybody can see what the holes are on that team, and until you trade Marner or an Nylander, you're not going to see any difference, because those guys, I mean, what was the stat? Nylander like led the league last year in defensive zone giveaways or something like that. It's just crazy, man. It's crazy. Like, I don't know. I find it hilarious, to be honest. And I'm not even bitter about it, because like, we kind of dominated them anyway. So I don't know where they go from here. I do, to be fair, as far as like results go, like they do have Martin Jones in net. Samsonov has been a mess, and that does matter, obviously. But that's on you. You can't sign a goalie because you don't have the cap. Why don't you have the cap? You know? Yeah, it's to
Well,
me.
it's about buying into the system, regardless of your talent level, bro. Like, look at how Pittsburgh has won. Look at how some of these other teams have won. Their stars still, get their numbers right and play well. Like Kusherov's getting a ton of points. Stamkos is having a solid season now. Hagel's getting points after signing him. So they have deficiencies. No team is perfect. We all, the Panthers have some deficiencies on offense, especially. But what I think the contradiction of that fan base too is that they do want the stars, right? Like, they want the attention. They want the celebration. Austin Matthews scoring all those goals, and that's fun. Like, that's, of course, everybody would love to have. When Parker Brewer was in the Panthers, we were terrible, and he was scoring 50 goals every year. Like, it was fun to watch, but ultimately there was nothing in the play. The one time they made the playoffs, they got swept, right? So I think that what happens with that team is that they ultimately, and the GMs, I do think, get the pressure from the ownership, probably in Shanahan, who's a voice of the ownership, because I don't even think Shanahan can make his own decisions on his own. He answers to a board, and they want the Bertuzzis and Domis. They want the stories. They want the storylines. They want the attention. They went after Klingberg in a way because it was a name that people recognized. That was a terrible signing. Like, that, objectively, even before the injury, like, it made no sense. And the Reeves thing too, this idea of bringing juice and bringing like whatever. It's like,
No, man. They brought some snot.
Yeah, snot, whatever.
They
Like, play music
snot.
in the It's a quiet locker room. You got to play music, hip hop, whatever. Like, it's so stupid. Like, these guys don't have a personality, like, in terms of wanting to win, like, for real. Like, really sacrifice themselves on defense, give up certain things. They won't do it for more than a game or two. And I think that's and it continues to happen over and over and over. And it's like, what are you guys doing? Like, you could move that money around. You could trade some guys, get assets. Even if you have a worse regular season, the Panthers took the risk, started slow, but then you build toward a culture. And then Matthews can win a cup, like some of these guys can actually give you something, because you can still use what they have. I mean, they have a ton of talent, but you have to both make them believe and work in a certain way. And then you also have to get the rest of the team well constructed. Like, they could have used Mikolas, and we keep saying that, even Kulikov's, like, that size, that defense, physicality. ability to kill penalties. Like that is so crucial for a team like that. And it's incredibly unbalanced right now because McCabe likes to play a lot of offense. Liljegren is the liability. Brody's older and not playing as great on defense. Riley, as I told you, is just like another forward, even though he's solid. He's a talented guy. But yeah, it's just funny how it just keeps happening over and over. And you listen to Keefe after the game, with the Senators. And the game with the Rangers and the game with Columbus and the ones that they lost. And yeah, he'll be pissed here or there, but I don't see like a progress. I don't see him talking about the way Maurice breaks down. Like, here's what we're trying to improve. Here, what the numbers are saying. Here's like what we're trying to do. It's like they need a coaching change and culture change, or they need to trade some guys, or a little bit of both. But it is just funny to see from afar how a team with so much money and so much attention and so many resources and such a loyal fan base, because at the end of the day, they're loyal fans, like, just won't really commit to what they need. And if they don't, man, if this is going to be their plan, they're going to miss out on the window. I mean, Matthews might not win there. He might decide to leave in 4 or 5 years or whatever, to go chase a cup when he's older. So it is fascinating to watch. Just how like talented, but also sloppy and crazy and disorganized that team is, against any team really. So yeah, it's fun. It's fun to have that in the division. It's fun to see Tampa finally struggle a little bit. The Red Wings are going down a little bit now, out of the playoff spot for the first time this season. The Senators are not as good as people thought. Buffalo's struggling. So, the Bruins are going to level out, I think, at some point. So we got to keep fighting, man. See if we can get that second, third spot in the division. I don't necessarily want the first spot, but if we can take the first spot, then we'll play a wild card. So maybe it may not work.
Yeah, although it depends. Like, that wild card might be like Pittsburgh, maybe even Tampa, which, I mean, you can't be scared to play those teams.
Yeah, no. I mean, I wouldn't be too scared. I mean, yeah, who knows? It could be the Devils. I don't know how. It depends on the matchups in the Atlantic and all that. But yeah, you never know where you can't control that. I mean, at the end of the day, get in. Don't be a wild card. You don't want to face the Bruins. You don't want to have to go through a gauntlet in the playoffs. And also, you don't want to, again, be fighting at the end of the season. You kind of want to give yourself a little bit of at least a week. But anyway, yeah, man, and keep watching the Leafs, man. It's a fascinating watch. Such a different style from the Panthers. It's so weird.
Yeah, and every team kind of has that, but I think the difference is, part of it is just the effort. Like, if the Leafs just played a little bit harder on back checking, helping out their defense, not taking off as soon as the puck is in their possession in the defensive zone, not gliding out there, and Nylander does it, Tavares even does it, he's the captain. Like, you just can't have that. So I do think that they need a coaching change, as well as trade Marner or Nylander, whoever you want to do, and just kind of like you said, don't miss out on the window, because you only have Austin Matthews for the next 4 or 5 years. He's going to want a huge contract after that as well. And even if you keep him, what are you going to surround them with? And they need a lot. They need a better defense. Last year, they were pretty good on defense, actually, but they have better players. Their third and fourth line was much, much better. But yeah, let's see where that goes. That's always fun to watch, one way or the other. And yeah, anything else? Was there anything else that we wanted to touch on around the league?
No, man. We got a few games for next week. We got tonight, tomorrow, back to back. Then we go on the road. I think Tuesday, Thursday games. So we'll have 4 games to talk about. Good stretch. We get Coyotes, and then I think Avalanche. I want to say. I don't know if Avalanche or Vegas, who's first, but yeah, we got some interesting games coming up, and it'll be good to evaluate those games, and maybe do a reaction video here or there. We'll see.
All right, guys, if you made it this far, congrats. I know that was really difficult to do. All right, we'll catch you guys next week. We'll see how this week goes. We might do a reaction video if anything fun or interesting pops up. That trade window ended, so we can call up guys again, send guys down again. Now that we will, I think Maurice already said that he expects the same lineup tonight. Bob and Reinhart had the day off yesterday. So they'll be good to go. Pretty sure Bob is starting tonight. I think they're going to ride Bob as much as possible. Stoller's probably goes Saturday against the Canadiens.
Stoller's will go tomorrow and maybe gets one of the road games. Maybe the last one against St. Louis or something.
Yeah, and we're either going to see Knight come in a month or so, or he's just going to be down there the rest of the season. I don't know if we go into the playoffs with Stollers. I can't imagine that that's the game plan. But then again, like, you only need him for a game here and there, so that's going to be interesting. I do wish that, you know, if Knight shows that he's heading in the right direction, that we call him up and get him going. But I don't know if it's a little too late now to do that.
Yeah, we'll see, man. I'm sure they have a couple of different plans, so we'll see.
But yeah, all right, guys.
Stoller's been okay, so.
Yeah, he's been serviceable. As a backup, he's actually
his numbers are good.
He hasn't been bad. Yeah, he's had a bad game or two. All right, guys. We'll catch you next week. Thank you for watching. Peace.